So today I'm going to study lil-gui, which is a library that helps you customize the visualizations. Helps you create a component that allows you to customize the visualizations. And I still haven't done the customization components, and the reason why is because as I was figuring out the events for the drag event for the node, I realized that I can put attributes on the three.js objects themselves, and also that the main point of the customization component is going to be to change the dynamics of the visualization, obviously, and that's going to depend on what I want to do, what I'm going to do with the other parts of the project, which is to get the information. And also, I realized that but I want to implement something similar to Vue.js. And that was the point of using the physics engine in the first place, in the other way that I was doing. But now I think that what I'm going to try to do is just to implement the Vue.js physics engine, which is not really a physics engine because they don't have collision detection, I think. But I'm just going to try to study their library and try to implement. And the way that I have now is with the D3 library, and I don't understand how it works. And I think that I can simplify a lot if I think about it, because I changed the way that things work, and I'm just changing the position directly on the three.js objects. So there's a bunch of, like the structure of the thing, I think can be completely different because I don't need to run those other functions. And what I want to do is to understand how the D3 functions work, then maybe try to get them on the local project that I have, and then maybe try to get the graphology functions as well, because I want to have like the control over all the algorithms that create the layouts. And then from that point, create the physics engine for Vue.js. And then after that, I'm going to be able to create the custom components, the customization component. Because the customization is going to be, I'm going to try to achieve something similar to what Vue.js has, which they allow you to change the physics of the visualization, which I think is much better. And right now I just had the fixed layouts, but obviously this is a lot of things to do, so I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to do them, because it's almost the time for the Build Space Nights and Weekends project, which I hope I'm accepted and I'm part of. So ideally I would be able to get to a point where I can start making like something useful when Nights and Weekends starts, which I think is on the 5th of August. So, yeah. I think I'm just gonna study this. This library here is, like I said, the library. I think I saw that. I actually don't remember. I think it was one of the three.js examples. So there's this one, and there's also this one that I saw on the WebGL examples that creates a custom component that allows you to change the camera. And I think I might try to implement this. The easiest way, I think I already implemented this before, is to just download the library and then create this class, GUI, and then you pass an object, and with that object you pass the kind of input I think you want. And then based on that, it already creates everything for you. But I want to understand how it works because I'm probably gonna create something different. So I think I'm gonna try to achieve something similar, but in a different way, because, and this is the whole thing, is because like the challenge is gonna depend on the stuff that I wanna do with the compilers. So yeah, now I think I have to study the D3 as well, libraries first. So I study this and then D3, and then after, once I'm able to simplify everything on the project, hopefully, then I'll start working on the customization. But the issue is that I'm not really sure because I have to study compilers as well. So one idea that I have now is I'm gonna take this, create the spreadsheets here, and I'm going to write down this stuff that's because I'm gonna manually study these libraries. So I wanna write down this stuff that I'm struggling with and try to think about different things that I can search for later that are gonna help me to create a parsing of the files so I can structure the information and make it easier to understand. Because that's the goal that I'm trying to achieve, is to make it a lot faster and easier to study these libraries, so I don't have to do what I'm gonna do now, to just manually go over them. And I watched a bunch of videos about compilers and stuff like that, and a lot of these videos I didn't understand very well because I didn't like the style of explanation. They talk about some stuff about the grammar, and I think it's gonna be very hard to figure out a way. So, and this is the main challenge, is like, first I need to clarify exactly what I want to capture from the files, and then I need to figure out a way to structure that, or to get that information, which is going to be very hard. So maybe I'll try to do both of these things at the same time. I think I kind of have to because I don't have a lot of time. But I wrote down all these keywords here, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them on the as a SkyDraw and try to make a flowchart of them. So as I study there, I write stuff down here, and then I write down all these keywords, and then I try to see if I can find a connection between them. But I'm not really sure if that's a good way. I think I saw a video from some guy that talks about how to learn faster, and he explains like these graphs, but I didn't understand very well. But I think, yeah, I have to study more his method, but I think it makes sense because the way he talks about it is that you shouldn't, like, writing down things linearly is very bad because that's not how your brain works. So when you write down linearly, you lose a lot of power because the way that it works is more, it's not only linear, it's lateral as well. So that's why a graph works better, which makes a lot of sense to me. And the way I think he talks about it is that you should get the overview of the thing first, which I also agree, and then like get the general idea of how everything is connected, but even though you don't understand all the specifics, and then from that point you should try to connect. But the part of the connecting and building the graph is kind of hard because I didn't understand from the videos very well how you're supposed to do that. Yeah, so I think I'm just gonna put some music. I'm gonna put Harry Mack, and then I'm just gonna go over this stuff and write down here the things that I think are interesting. I think one thing I already know, but I'm struggling to think about how to search for this and how to make it happen. And this is the part that is hard. So, but I think is one of the main things that I have to figure out is how to keep track of the global variables. But the issue is that the issue is that like they're gonna change the name. That's the problem. So I think I'm gonna have to dive at least at some, like, I don't think I need to build a full compiler, but I need to dive into some levels of compilers because I need to figure out a way, understand how the compiler is gonna keep track of the variable. And the other problem is that ideally I would be able to do something that doesn't require the program to run, but I'm not really sure how to do that because obviously, like, the code is going to change a lot depending on the data that it receives. So how can I extract the information without putting the data? It's very hard to think about. So here, like the simplest thing that I was thinking about doing is just obviously reading the file, and then you just keep track of, you do some string pattern or something like that that keeps track of. But this is another thing that I have to see. I think this has to do with the stuff about grammar that they were talking about, because you have operators and then you have variables and then you have like have all possible things that people can write on the file. And I think this is the issue, because how do you define what is acceptable and what's not? And how do you translate that? So I think, because if you think about it, there's an infinite potential of things you can write on the file. So how do you make sure, like how do you create the constraints that are gonna make the syntax of the language? And how do you decide what each thing is gonna do? That's very hard to think about. So maybe the first thing that I should do is study how to crack. How does the compiler do this? How does it keep track of the variables? I think that's the first one. And then after, if I create something that keeps track of the variables, then I can see if I can figure out how the compiler is gonna keep track of how the variable changes over time. Because I want to trace the life cycle of a variable, I think. So, and the variable is gonna become something else depending on where it's passed. And I think that's the challenge. So, like for example, let's say you have a function that accepts two arguments. One is like A and B, and the other one's B. And then you have a variable outside of the function that is called, I don't know, counter or something like that. So if I get the variable counter, I want to keep track of the value of the counter passing through the function as an argument A. So when the counter is passed through the function, it's going to become A, which changes the name, obviously. But I want to be able to I want to capture how the variable travels across the program. I think that's the main thing. Yeah, so the rest of this stuff I'm gonna write down here if I think about something. But what I'm gonna do now is just go over this and try to figure out how it works. Maybe read the documentation again as well. Maybe I should read the documentation first with the text-to-speech. Then I'll go over the code. And I see. And then maybe after I try to implement. So I spent some time going over the code, then try to implement. I think it's very simple to implement though. So. And then after after I spend some time studying this one, I'm gonna study the D3 ones to see if I can just get the algorithms that they use to create the layouts. So the idea that I have is to not make it so very complicated, because that's another thing that I was looking at about the animation, that I was thinking about if I have a layout and I want to implement physics as well, how do I make it so that when I click a button on the customization component, it's going to go from the physics to the layout? And the problem is that you have to implement animations, I think. And I think it becomes very challenging to do that, because I was looking at the code for React Spring, and there's a bunch of code. And also, I think that, like, I was watching these videos here, and one way he explains how to do it is just like as if you had a slider and then you're changing the value of the position like one by one. And I think you can do that by implementing a function. And then from the function, you just put like the delta. So the final position, the end position, and then one minus the other is going to be the delta, obviously. So you do that with vectors. And then you create a loop, and then, or but this is the challenge. Like you have to integrate that with the request animation frame loop. And I think it's going to be very tricky to make it so that it only exists during when the user presses the button, and then it's out of the animation loop after that, because obviously I don't want these animations should stack on the request animation frame loop, and this is the problem. So because in the way that he explains, like even after the animation is done, the code is still going to be there, because the only thing that is going to change is the position. So it's very hard to think about how to make it so that the code only exists during that part of the animation. And then I would probably have to figure out how to remove the function from the use frame hook from React to Fiber. But I think it's just too complicated for now, and I have a lot of other stuff to figure out. So I think it's better to just give two different options. So I put the layouts there, and I also put the physics simulation, and then through the customization component, I give the ability to select between one or the other, but not both at the same time. So I think I'm just gonna read this stuff a little bit with the text-to-speech. Then I'm gonna start studying while listening to some music.
lil-gui 0.18.2 API controller class lil-gui makes a floating panel for controllers on the web. Works as a drop-in replacement for dat.gui in most projects. See migrating for a list of breaking changes. Basic demo examples guide API GitHub. Import GUI from lil-gui. Const GUI equals new GUI. Const my object equals my boolean true my function my string lil-gui my number 1 GUI.add my object my boolean / checkbox GUI.add my object my function / button GUI.add my object my string / text field GUI.add my object my number / number field / add sliders to number fields by passing min and max GUI.add my object my number 0 1 GUI.add my object my number 0 100 2 / snap to even number / create dropdowns by passing an array or object of name values GUI.add my object my number 0 1 2 GUI.add my object my number label 1 0 label 2 1 label 3 2 / chainable methods GUI.add my object my property name custom name on change value equals greater than console.log value / create color pickers for multiple color formats const color formats equals string hashtag ffffff int 0xffff object r 1 g 1 b 1 array 1 1 1 GUI.add color formats string build source minified equals 30.1 kilobits 8.5 kilobits zipped examples basic demo kitchen sink exhaustive demonstration of features and styles 3.js / examples hot swap replaces dat.gui across all 3.js example pages except for a few. This was done just by replacing the import URL. Pixie.js filters demo hot swap replaces a very long dat.gui guide. lil-gui gives you an interface for changing the properties of any JavaScript object at runtime. It's intended as a drop-in replacement for dat.gui, implemented with more modern web standards and some new quality of life features. The migrating section lists any breaking changes between the two libraries. The changes are limited to the lesser used portions of the API, but you should read it before moving a project to lil-gui. If you've used dat.gui before, the beginning of this guide will be review. New features are introduced beginning in the change event section. Installation. You can install lil-gui with npm for use with a bundler. $npm install lil-gui save dev. Import GUI from lil-gui. For quick sketches, you can import lil-gui directly from a CDN. Script type equals module greater than import GUI from https://cdn.deliver.net/npm/lil-gui at 0.18/+ism /script. The library is also available in UMD format under the namespace lil. Script src equals https://cdn. Adding controllers. This code creates an input that lets you change this page's title. Const GUI equals new GUI. GUI.add document title. Controls title. lil-gui will choose an appropriate controller based on the property's data type. Since document.title is a string, a text field is created. Here are some more of the data types you can control. Obj equals my boolean true my string lil-gui my number 1 my function alert high GUI.add my boolean / checkbox GUI.add my string / text field GUI.add my number / number field GUI.add my function / button controls me boolean me string me number me function. Numbers and sliders. Numbers can be constrained to a range using min and max. You can use step to round values to multiples of a given number. Obj equals has min 1 has max 99 has step 50 GUI.add has min 0 GUI.add has max 100 semicolon GUI.add has step 10 control shows mean is max step. Number controllers with a minimum and a maximum automatically become sliders. You can use an abbreviated syntax to define them both at once. Obj equals number 1 number 2 50 GUI.add number 1 0 1 / minute max GUI.add number 2 0 100 10 / minute max step controls number 1 number 2 dropdowns. You can create a dropdown for any data type by providing an array of accepted values. If you pass an object, its keys will be used as labels for the options. Obj equals size medium speed 1 GUI.add size small medium large GUI.add speed slow 0.1 normal 1 fast 5 control size small medium large medium speed slow normal fast normal colors. lil-gui recognizes colors in a number of formats. CSS strings, RGB objects or integer hex values to name a few. You can use add color to create a color picker for controlling these values. Obj equals color 1 hashtag AOOFF color 2 hashtag A0F color 3 RGB 170 0 255 color 4 0 OOFF GUI.add color obj color 1 GUI.add color obj color 2 GUI.add color obj color 3 semicolon GUI.add color obj color 4 controls color 1 color 2 color 3 color 4. lil-gui uses an RRGGB format for display, but it honors the original data type when writing colors. Numbers remain numbers, strings remain strings. However, all string-based colors are normalized to hashtag RRGGB format on update. RGB objects and arrays. Some libraries use objects or arrays of RGB values to describe colors. These can also be controlled by add color. The color channels are assumed to be between 0 and 1, but you can also set your own range. Color objects and arrays are never replaced. Only their components are modified. Obj equals color object R 0.667 G 0 B 1 color array 0.667 0 1 GUI.addColor obj color object GUI.addColor obj color array controls color object color array. RGB channel ranges. The channel range for RGB objects and arrays can be overridden per controller by passing a third parameter to add color. If your colors are coming out too bright, you might need to set this to 255. Obj equals color object R 170 G 0 B 255 color array 170 0 255 GUI controls color object color array. Folders. You can organize controllers in collapsible groups using a folder. The method returns a new GUI instance representing the folder. You can add controllers to the folder just like you would with any GUI. / top level controller GUI.addObj scale 0 1 / nested controllers const folder equals GUI.add folder. Position folder.addObj x folder.addObj y folder.addObj z. Control scale position size. Change events. If you want to call a function every time a controller is changed, you can pass it to the controllers on change method. The new value will be passed to your function after every change, so long as it originates from that controller and not from code elsewhere. GUI.addParams foo on change value equals greater than console.log value. The onFinish change handler fires after a controller changes and loses focus. This comes in handy if you're using a slow function with a controller that produces continuous change events like a slider or color picker. GUI.addParams foo on finish change complex function global change handlers. GUI also provides an on-change handler that fires after changes to any of its children. These handlers receive an event object with details about the controller that was modified. GUI.onChange event equals greater than event.object / object that was modified event.property / string name of property event.value / new value of controller event.controller / controller that was modified. GUI.onChange events bubble upward. A handler applied to the root GUI will fire after every change. Handlers applied to folders will only be called after changes to that folder or its descendants. GUI.onFinish change works just like GUI.onChange, but it only fires at the end of change events. Listening and updating. If a value controlled by the GUI is changed in code anywhere outside of the GUI, the new value won't be reflected by the controller's display. You can call listen to update the controller's display every frame. GUI.addParams feedback -1 1. Listen.disable animate params.feedback equals math.sign date.now 1000 controls feedback. You can also call controller.update display at any time to manage this behavior yourself. Saving using GUI.save. You can create an object that saves the current value of all properties added to the GUI. You can pass that object to GUI.load to restore the saved values. The following creates a GUI that can save a preset. Press the save preset button, then modify any controller. Pressing the load preset button restores the values you saved. Let preset equals const equals value 1 original value 2 1996 save preset / save current values to an object preset equals GUI.save load button.enable load preset GUI.load preset GUI.addObj value 1 GUI.addObj value 2 GUI.addObj save preset const load button equals GUI.addObj load preset disable controls value 1 value 2 save preset load preset save object format. The following is an example of an object returned by GUI.save. The object will be JSON compatible. It can be saved to disk unless you're using non-primitive data types in a dropdown. Color objects and arrays are fine. Controllers value 1 original value 2 1996 folders / if GUI has folders folder name 1 controllers folders folder name 2 controllers folders both save and load except a recursive parameter which is true by default. Use save false and load data false to ignore any folders within the GUI. The saved object will contain an empty folders object. Name collisions. Save will throw an error if the GUI contains more than one controller or folder with the same name. You can avoid these collisions by renaming the controllers with name. GUI.addPosition x name position.x GUI.addRotation x name rotation.x styling. By default, the GUI is added to document.body and attached to the top right of the window with fixed positioning. You can add the GUI to a different element by passing a container parameter to the constructor. Const GUI equals new GUI container $#GUI width and long names. The GUI can be made wider by passing a pixel width to the constructor. This is usually done when controller names are too long to fit within the panel. Const GUI equals new GUI width 400. The library provides a few ways to manage this using CSS variables as well. lil-gui width 400px name width 65%. The width property does the same thing as the one in the constructor, but allows us to use any valid CSS value. Adjusting name width allows you to increase the size of names relative to controllers, which might be better than enlarging the entire panel. CSS variables and custom style sheets. lil-gui exposes a number of CSS variables that allow you to customize colors and dimensions. You can see an exhaustive list of these variables in the kitchen sink demo. lil-gui background color number 000 widget color #0 off padding 2px. If you want to start a new style sheet from scratch, the default styles can be left out entirely with the inject styles parameter. New GUI inject styles false touch styles. Controllers are larger on touch devices to make them easier to use. By default, these styles are applied using a CSS query. Add media pointer course. You can disable this behavior with the touch styles parameter. GUI equals new GUI touch styles false GUI.dom element.class list.add force touch styles. You can then apply these styles at a time of your choosing by adding the force touch styles CSS class to the GUI's root element. Migrating. For most projects, moving from dat.gui to lil-gui should be as simple as changing the import URL. The API is designed to be as backwards compatible as is reasonably possible, but this section aims to address any breaking changes. API changes. GUI._controllers is now GUI.controllers. GUI._folders is now GUI.folders, and it's an array, not a map. GUI.remove. Controller is now controller.destroy. GUI.remove folder. Folder is now folder.destroy. Folders are open by default. DOM structure. The DOM structure of the GUI has changed, so code that interacts with dat.gui's inner DOM elements is likely to break. GUI._all is now GUI.$children. GUI._close button is now GUI.title. DOM element is still DOM element for both controller and GUI. CSS class names are also different. DG.ac is now lil-gui.au to place. Color controller changes. There's one major difference in the way dat.gui and lil-gui handle color controllers. Channel ranges for RGB objects and RGB arrays are assumed to be in the range of 0 to 255 in dat.gui and 0 to 1 in lil-gui. In general, this shouldn't have much of an impact, as it's common practice to use hex values and an on-change handler when using dat.gui with a library like three.js that expects RGB 0 to 1 / common three.js plus dat.gui color pattern params equals color.getHex semicolon dat_GUI.addColor params color on-change v equals greater than color.setHex v. Since lil-gui and three.js agree on RGB ranges, this code can be simplified. Params equals color lil_gui.addColor params color. The other differences in color handling are fairly minor. Lil-gui always writes to #RGBB format for strings, even those defined as RGB or #RGB. Lil-gui uses the native HTML input type equals color tag instead of a custom color picker. Lil-gui doesn't support any HSL or alpha color formats. Removed. Presets and GUI.remember are gone in favor of save/load, which also removes mention of local storage. The static GUI.toggle hide method and the h to hide hotkey. API GUI class constructor add color add folder load save open close show hide title reset on change on finish change on open close destroy controllers recursive. GUI class new GUI autoplace container width title close folders inject styles touch styles parent creates a panel that holds controllers. New GUI container document.getElement by id custom parameters autoplace adds the GUI to document.body and fixes it to the top right of the page. Default true container adds the GUI to this DOM element. Overrides autoplace optional night moment width of the GUI in pixels usually set when name labels become too long. Note that you can make name labels wider in CSS with lil-gui name width 55% default 245 title name to display in the title bar default controls close folders pass true to close all folders in this GUI by default optional boolean inject styles injects the default style sheet into the page if this is the first GUI. Pass false to use your own style sheet default true touch styles makes controllers larger on touch devices. Pass false to disable touch styles default true parent adds this GUI as a child in another GUI. Usually this is done for you by add folder optional GUI src src/GUI.js:52. GUI.addObject, property, $1, max, step. Adds a controller to the GUI, inferring controller type using the type of operator. GUI.addObject, property, GUI.addObject, number, 0, 100, 1. GUI.addObject, options, 1, 2, 3. Parameters, object, the object the controller will modify. Required, object, property, name of the property to control. Required, string, $1, minimum value for number controllers, or the set of selectable values for a dropdown. Optional, number or object or array. Max, maximum value for number controllers. Optional, number, step value for number controllers. Optional, number, returns, controller, src/GUI.js:203. GUI.addColor, object, property, RGB scale equals 1. Adds a color controller to the GUI. Params equals CSS color, hashtag FFOOFF, RGB color, R, 0, G, 0.2, B, 0.4, custom range, 0, 127, 255, GUI.addColor params, CSS color, GUI.addColor params, RGB color, semicolon GUI.addColor params, custom range, 255. Parameters, object, the object the controller will modify. Required, object, property, name of the property to control. Required, string, RGB scale, maximum value for a color channel when using an RGB color. You may need to set this to 255 if your colors are too bright. Default, 1, returns, controller, src/GUI.js:260, GUI.add folder, title, adds a folder to the GUI, which is just another GUI. This method returns the nested GUI so you can add controllers to it. Const folder equals GUI.add folder, position, folder.add position, X, folder.add position, Y, folder.add position, Z. Parameters, title, name to display in the folder's title bar. Required, string, returns, GUI, src/GUI.js:276, GUI.loadObj, recursive equals true, recalls values that were saved with GUI.save. Parameters, obj required, object, recursive, pass false to exclude folders descending from this GUI. Default, true, returns, this, src/GUI.js:288, GUI.save recursive equals true, returns an object mapping controller names to values. The object can be passed to GUI.load to recall these values. Controllers, prop 1, prop 2, value, folders, folder name 1, controllers, folders, folder name 2, controllers, folders, parameters, recursive, pass false to exclude folders descending from this GUI. Default, true. Returns, object, src/GUI.js:340, GUI.open equals true. Opens a GUI or folder. GUI and folders are open by default. GUI.open, //open GUI.open false, //close GUI.open GUI._closed, //toggle. Parameters, open, pass false to close default. True. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:386, GUI.close, closes the GUI. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:401, GUI.show equals true. Shows the GUI after it's been hidden. GUI.show false, //hide GUI.show GUI._hidden, //toggle. Parameters, show default, true. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:420, GUI.hide. Hides the GUI. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:434, GUI.title. Change the title of this GUI. Parameters, title required, string. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:483, GUI.reset recursive equals true. Resets all controllers to their initial values. Parameters, recursive, pass false to exclude folders descending from this GUI. Default, true. Returns, this, src/GUI.js:498, GUI.onChange, callback. Pass a function to be called whenever a controller in this GUI changes. GUI.onChange, event equals greater than, event.object/object that was modified, event.property/string, name of property, event.value/new value of controller, event.controller/controller that was modified. Parameters, callback required, function, returns, this, src/GUI.js:516, GUI.onFinish change, callback. Pass a function to be called whenever a controller in this GUI has finished changing. GUI.onFinish change, event equals greater than, event.object/object that was modified, event.property/, string, name of property, event.value/new value of controller, event.controller/controller that was modified. Parameters, callback required, function, returns, this, src/GUI.js:554, GUI.onopen-close, callback. Pass a function to be called when this GUI or its descendants are opened or closed. GUI.onopen-close, change d equals greater than, console.log change d._closed. Parameters, callback required, function, returns, this, src/GUI.js:589, GUI.destroy, destroys all DOM elements and event listeners associated with this GUI. src/GUI.js:607, GUI.controllers recursive, returns an array of controllers contained by this GUI and its descendants. Returns, controller, src/GUI.js:626, GUI.folders recursive, returns an array of folders contained by this GUI and its descendants. Returns, GUI, src/GUI.js:638, GUI.children, array GUI vertical bar controller the list of controllers and folders contained by this GUI. src/GUI.js:79, GUI.controllers, controller, the list of controllers contained by this GUI. src/GUI.js:85, GUI.dom element, night moment, the outermost container element. src/GUI.js:109, GUI.folders, GUI, the list of folders contained by this GUI. src/GUI.js:91, GUI.parent, GUI, the GUI containing this folder, or undefined if this is the root GUI. src/GUI.js:67, GUI.root, GUI, the top level GUI containing this folder, or this if this is the root GUI. src/GUI.js:73, GUI.children, night moment, the DOM element that contains children. src/GUI.js:137, GUI.title, night moment, the DOM element that contains the title. src/GUI.js:116, GUI._closed, boolean, used to determine if the GUI is closed. Use GUI.open or GUI.close to change this. src/GUI.js:97, GUI._hidden, boolean, used to determine if the GUI is hidden. Use GUI.show or GUI.hide to change this. src/GUI.js:103, GUI._onChange, function, used to access the function bound to onChange events. Don't modify this value directly. Use the GUI.onChange, callback, method instead. src/GUI.js:522, GUI._onFinish change, function, used to access the function bound to onFinish change events. Don't modify this value directly. Use the GUI.onFinish change, callback, method instead. src/GUI.js:560, GUI._title, string, current, title of the GUI. Use GUI.title to modify this value. src/GUI.js:488, controller, class, controller.name, sets the name of the controller and its label in the GUI. Parameters, name required, string, returns, this, src/controller.js:102, controller.onChange, callback. Pass a function to be called whenever the value is modified by this controller. The function receives the new value as its first parameter. The value of this will be the controller. For function controllers, the onChange callback will be fired on click after the function executes. Const controller equals GUI.addObject, property, controller.onChange, function v, console.log the value is now plus v, console.assert this equals controller. Parameters, callback required, function, returns, this, src/controller.js:129, controller.onFinish change, callback. Pass a function to be called after this controller has been modified and loses focus. Const controller equals GUI.addObject, property, controller.onFinish change, function v, console.log change is complete, plus v, console.assert this controller. Parameters. Callback required. Function. Returns. This. src/controller.js:167. Controller.reset. Sets the controller back to its initial value. Returns. This. src/controller.js:201. Controller.enable equals true. Enables this controller. Controller.enable. Controller.enable false. / disable controller.enable controller._disabled. / toggle. Parameters. Enable default. True. Returns. This. src/controller.js:216. Controller.disable. Disabled equals true. Disables this controller. Controller.disable. Controller.disable. False. / enable controller.disable. Controller._disabled. / toggle. Parameters. Disable default. True. Returns. This. src/controller.js:229. Controller.show equals true. Shows the controller after it's been hidden. Controller.show. Controller.show false. / hide controller.show controller._hidden. / toggle. Parameters. Show default. True. Returns. This. src/controller.js:251. Controller.hide. Hides the controller. Returns. This. src/controller.js:265. Controller.options. Options. Destroys this controller and replaces it with a new option controller. Provided as a more descriptive syntax for GUI.add, but primarily for compatibility with dat.gui. Use caution, as this method will destroy old references to this controller. It will also change controller order if called out of sequence, moving the option controller to the end of the GUI. / safe usage GUI.add object 1 property. Options. A, B, C. GUI.add object 2 property. / danger const C equals GUI.add object 1 property. GUI.add object 2 property. C.options. A, B, C. / controller is now at the end of the GUI even though it was added first. Assert C.parent.children.index of C equals -1 / C references a controller that no longer exists. Parameters. Options required. Object or array. Returns. Controller. src/controller.js:296. Controller.min. Sets the minimum value. Only works on number controllers. Parameters. Min required. Number. Returns. This. src/controller.js:309. Controller.maxmax. Sets the maximum value. Only works on number controllers. Parameters. Max required. Number. Returns. This. src/controller.js:319. Controller.step. Value set by this controller will be rounded to multiples of step. Only works on number controllers. Parameters. Step required. Number. Returns. This. src/controller.js:330. Controller.decimals. Decimals. Rounds the displayed value to a fixed number of decimals, without affecting the actual value like step. Only works on number controllers. GUI.add object. Property. Listen. Decimals. 4. Parameters. Decimals required. Number. Returns. This. src/controller.js:343. Controller.listen. Listen equals true. Calls update display every animation frame. Pass false to stop listening. Parameters. Listen default. True. Returns. This. src/controller.js:352. Controller.getValue. Returns object property. Returns. Any. src/controller.js:396. Controller.setValue. Value. Sets the value of object property. Invokes any on-change handlers and updates the display. Parameters. Value required. Any. Returns. This. src/controller.js:405. Controller.update display. Updates the display to keep it in sync with the current value. Useful for updating your controllers when their values have been modified outside of the GUI. Returns. This. src/controller.js:417. Controller.destroy. Destroys this controller and removes it from the parent GUI. src/controller.js:434. Controller.dom element. Night moment. The outermost container DOM element for this controller. src/controller.js:52. Controller.initial value. Any. The value of object property when the controller was created. src/controller.js:46. Controller.object. Object. The object this controller will modify. src/controller.parent. GUI. The GUI that contains this controller. src/controller.js:14. The name. src/controller. The DOM element that receives src controller dot the src the src/controller dot used to use controller controller dot used to use controller dot show or controller dot controller dot underscore listening used to determine if the controller is currently listening. Don't modify this value directly. Use the controller dot listen true vertical bar false method instead. src/controller.js:359 controller dot underscore name string the controller's name src used to access controller dot underscore on finish change function used to access the function bound to unfinished change events. Don't modify this value directly. Use the controller dot on finish change callback method instead. src/controller.js:173.
I was just thinking about where I'm gonna put this thing, and I think I have to see how I did on the project, but I think ideally I would be able to put outside of the canvas, but I think I need to, because of the way that I'm setting up the store for the graph, I don't remember really well if the store is inside of the canvas or not. If the store is inside of the canvas, then I'm gonna have to put this inside of the canvas, which I think is probably not very good, because I think, I'm not really sure, but intuitively it feels better to separate the customization component from the canvas. So I think I'm just gonna go over this now. I'll be right back. When I come back, I'm probably gonna put some music and then just go over this stuff. Maybe I should think about like what exactly I'm trying to achieve first, because that's gonna make it better to go over. So I think what I'm trying to do, the problem is, like, the thing is, I remember when I built a custom inputs, a custom slider, and I remember that it's a lot harder than I thought it was, because you can't modify the slider properties, I think, from the default. So if you just use the normal slider from HTML, it's just blue, and you can't modify the properties, as far as I remember. So And it's really annoying with the CSS to make it work. And I want to have custom sliders because I think it looks a lot better. So the way that I'm envisioning is very similar to the way that the VJS one is, but with different styles. So it's gonna have sliders, and then some of them are gonna have checkboxes. Some of them are gonna have the options thing. So pretty much the same as the VJS one, but with the styles different. And then ideally I would isolate that into whatever part of the page I want. So the position would be absolute. But that's another thing that's kind of annoying because of CSS. So yeah, I think what makes it this hard now is because I don't. Maybe I should study the D3 one first, and I should figure out first. But the thing is, I wanna have on my mind that I finished the visualization thing, so I can focus more on the compiler stuff. So I'm not really sure what to do. I wanna have something exactly like this. And I think I'm probably gonna try to copy the physics from VJS as much as possible. So just get the algorithms from each library and then put them all together. The thing that I don't like about graphology is that it requires the nodes to be on a list of objects, and I think it's more efficient if I have an asset object. So that way it becomes a lot better to change the edges later because you just have to look for the key. And the way that I'm doing now, I have to create a map of the nodes in the beginning. So the other thing is that I have to see if I can put everything on the three.js object itself, because that might be better, but I'm not really sure as well about that. Because I think that one possible downside of so one way to go about it is you put all the properties. You can't do the three.js object only the three.js object because there needs to be a way to connect the other part, the backend, with the front end. So I need some intermediary, let's say, data structure, which is the nodes and edges. And then from that, I translate. So one way would be to get the properties of get all the information from the objects, from the nodes, and put them on the three.js objects themselves, the group that I'm creating to handle the node and the label. And but the issue with that is that it might be. I think it shouldn't have an impact on the visualization because, but it might have because of memory. That's the stuff that I'm not 100% sure. Because you're putting more stuff, more information on the three.js thing. So because the engine is probably gonna calculate everything, but it uses the WebGL, obviously, the shaders and the fragments. So I think regardless of how big the object is, the class that contains the information for creating the mesh on three.js, I think it doesn't change much. It probably doesn't change at all the speed of the visualization or the memory that it uses. So I think it might be better to just put all the information on the three.js thing itself as I created the graph. And if I did things like that, it would be much better if I could separate all the algorithms. So that way I don't have to choose the libraries. So if I just figure out how the graphology algorithms work and how the D3 layout work, then I don't need to set up things in the way that they did there. But then I'm gonna have to simplify like how they design the functions, and it's gonna be very annoying to do that. So this stuff is gonna influence, I think, this part here as well, because from what I remember from VJS, the way that they do the physics is not actually, they're just changing the positions of the nodes based on the forces here. So the forces are the positions, let's say. So you create like abstract vectors and then you change the values based on that. But it looks like it has collision detection as well. So maybe they are using some physics engine for this. So I think what I want to achieve is this one with different styles. So I need to go from the GUI, the lil-gui, which is this format here, to this one, I think. So the question is, and because I'm probably gonna have to do custom sliders, is the way that I'm imagining the components is gonna be probably like a nested component where I'm gonna have to create a separate component just for the input because it's gonna be a bunch of HTML and CSS to make the input work. And then I'm gonna have to put those inputs inside of the custom component. And then make the logic based on the values and the options for each visualization that are gonna come as props from the main component. And I think, yeah, so I have to think about how to translate the little GUI to a component. I think that's the main part. So translate this to a React component. Or the other approach, obviously, is just use this and then change the code so that the visualization it works the way that I want to work. Because I remember I saw there that you can can call some function or pass an argument to put your own styles. I think it is inline styles to change the GUI, but I'm not really sure if the functionality is gonna work. And I remember I think I'm not gonna spend time trying to understand the Vue.js one because I remember going over the code and it's very annoying to figure out how they do it. So I think it's much better to just take one of these two approaches here, but I'm still not sure which one is better. I think probably the first one for now. But then it's gonna be harder, I think. Yeah, but I'm gonna study with this in mind, so I'll be right back. The most annoying part about this is the CSS, because I hate making the CSS right. It's just really annoying for me. So let me put some music and start going over this stuff. And they have a request animation frame here. Interesting.
Go ahead, sizzle right then. That's how you know you're the man. Go and throw it all in. Now you gotta hit it with a little bit of spice.
Now let's listen to this.
Sprinkle on some similes, a little bit of personification would be nice. Yeah, maybe a little bit of alliteration. Never be illiterate with the spit creations. That's how you cook it. Go ahead and stir it around and book it.
It gets too confusing because listening to music with lyrics usually is kind of harder to study. Then I'm gonna put some other stuff.
In the oven when you record, yeah, then mix it up and leave them floored. Yeah, take it out to a real rap master. I can smell the aroma as the food is being cooked. This the type of meal that'll leave y'all shook. Y'all know I be ripping them bars. We gon' serve y'all. We get the Michelin star. Let's go. Let me find my place. I'ma leave your mind erased. Shouts to Case over Screwface. Peace to them. Yeah, both of them are amazing men. Shouts to your nephew Charlie. Greatest hockey and lacrosse goalie. 9 years old. G. I know that they told me anytime I'm rhyming, I gotta do it boldly. Yeah. From here to Seattle, trying to diss someone in a rap battle, but you just can't cause you're too kind. Basically, that's what happens when my battle rhymes. Yeah, I can't do it face to face. I don't really want to leave my competitor erased. I'm like, damn, this shit is way too hyper. I don't want to battle, homie, let's just cipher. Yeah, I'ma do it off at the top regardless, but they tell us. And y'all know sometimes when I rhyme, they say my flows are overzealous. Beats about to end, so I ain't got time for the hook. But I leave you hooked with the lyrics coming off of the mental. You know I'm about to get y'all shook. Let's go. Yeah, okay,
Now that I think about it, I think it's probably better to try to implement like some small version first. I remember that I did this on the very beginning. It's not very hard, I think. So I think I'm just gonna open the project and try to do that first. Then after I have some idea of how it works, then I go back to studying this. I think that the way it works is pretty simple, but it might be better to like look at the source code from the points of the stuff that I want to do. Yeah, so first try to do what I want to do, which is to change the visualization. Then once I'm able to do that with the GUI, then I go over the source code to see what exactly is doing, so I can think about how to convert that into either a component or to change the source code so that I change the styles.
thinks he's doomed to suffer forever, cause no one can figure out what's wrong, they not that clever. The doctors don't have answers, he wonders if it's fatal. He'll wonder if he'll always be held down, cause he's disabled. Damn, a brighter future he wants to find. So much drama resting inside his mind. Damn, he's gotta find a way to relieve it. Some people turn to Buddhism, some people turn to Jesus, some people turn to journaling, but all of us turn to the heart. Yeah, all of us turn to the inner, that be the start. He looks inside, starts to reflect, it doesn't change overnight. He recognizes he's always judging, and that there ain't right. Yeah, so he tries to find a way to let himself off the hook, even though his situation is truly leaving him shook. And over time, he becomes more positive. He knows he has that drive inside his heart, there ain't no stopping this. It doesn't mean that he doesn't feel real pain, but that suffering, most of that comes from his brain. He learns to let go, accept life life as it is. Now he's a beautiful father that's raising 3 kids. Let's go. I get a little busy over the bass when I'm up in the place. When it comes to freestyles, every back is an ace. When it comes to kicking lips, man, I say on the chase. Shout to the queen. Y'all know I be the dopest on the scene. Gotta be the illest MC they've seen. Coming up with lyrics that are oh so clean. Y'all know I'm about to spit it. Grab on the mic and I'm ready to slay. This here is a rap battle between Pinocchio and Honest Dave. Honest Dave, you be telling the truth. Like I'm the dopest when I'm in the booth. Pinocchio's like, I got flows. There goes that nose. Pinocchio, you know that you wrong. Abraham Lincoln when I rhyme on these songs. How the fuck you gonna act like you truly holler skills? I be getting paid. No, you just a $5 bill. I get Benjamins. I get Benjamins. I'm the greatest rapper ever. There it goes again. Okay, fine, but I'm pretty good for a puppet. Nose shrinks down. That's some truth we can fuck with. Yeah, but Abraham Lincoln like, nah. I'm about to blast you off the top, cause I'm raw. He said, blast you off the top? That's funny, cause you know, when you got blasted in your top, that's how you gonna go. Aw, shit. Abraham Lincoln disses. H-Mac coming up with all that mischief. I break it down for good. Your flow is a rental. Pinocchio's like, my lyrics the most presidential. Yeah, back and forth, y'all know his flow's the hottest. I'ma kick your ass out the Oval Office. Nose grows, then comes back. That was obviously just hyperbole. Don't make my nose grow, certainly. Damn, ayo, this battle is vicious. Who's gonna win? This is real, not fictitious. Crazy, man. Both MCs went Abraham. Yeah, coming up the top of the don't believe this. Wishing I was the inventor of Reese's. Yeah, his name is Harry. My 2 favorite inventors is scary. No way, please do understand me. No coincidence, that's my favorite candy. Yeah, and you know that he just smothered the beat like the peanut butter. I'm about to win the cup, I'm about to win the trophy. Rappers all around the planet don't know me. A to the A to the B, B, B to the A. All up in the session today. Always articulate, beautiful, brilliant bars. Aight? I'ma keep it tight. I know this is a scheme, but first I gotta spell it out while I'm living my dream. Ayo, I'm on, spitting strong. I'm the freestyle Don. Man, rappers, they pretending like they at Comic-Con. Okay, I'm clever, lasting forever. I'm dope, they can't cope, have no hope. I'ma shred ya. Yeah, rhyme scheme got laced. I put it on ya. It's my honor. Mac is dope.
Think about what is the best place to put this, because I don't know like how it's gonna change the object. So I guess that's a good question to put here. Uh, I guess the GUI is more for the camera. Maybe should search for the examples on three.js. I think something else that I can do is just look at the examples of in WebGL, which is the other approach, which is the other file. Because I remember that it's very easy to find the examples. I think this is the biggest problem with this approach here. So I think the answer is going to be to create the component. It's probably going to be better. Now that I try to implement this, I'm realizing this. So the GUI is probably better to the scenes, because I think that the problem with the GUI is that it's probably only useful for the stuff that is related to the visualization, like for the three.js stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna search for examples on three.js. I think that's where I saw this.
That there's a double entendre. I'm addicted like heroin, which also is called dope. And plus my lyrics cool with my rhymes they could pair to this beat like Peeves pair to butt head. Yeah, I'ma break it down off tip. Y'all know I came through the rip. Hey, I'ma let my grip stay on the ground and I never slip. What would it be like living life through the odds of Benjamin Button? Man, wish I could tell you right now, but honestly, I got nothing. Yeah, HVAC, I break it down. I press the button, earn Benjamins. I'ma grab the word and I'ma flip it again for them. Yeah, y'all know the deal. HVAC getting them Benjis. Y'all know I press the button and it kills every other MC. Damn, I can make it happen with the swiftness. Over if you up and try to diss this, better bet the witness. HVAC rapid, faster but faster. I'm about to cause a disaster. Shout out to my friend Jackson and the freestyle master who be getting loose. Everybody all around the planet, the earth be loving everything that we produce. Killing it when I spill off top and I'm doing it much better. When it comes to that level, y'all know I'm a shred you. Can't go much further than the next triple lit. Gotta stay all up in the pocket when I'm ripping it. Real. Surfer. I can't really just freely go faster and faster because there's gears. So it's very clear which gear is the fastest I can go on any given beat. Because it goes between like duple and triple rhythms. So it'd be like, these here are some 16 notes at the slower side. Now I'll be switching to faster triplets, everyone knows it's a vibe. Now I'm going 30 seconds, this is double time. That's about as fast as I wanna go. But could I come off of the top with the faster triplets? Y'all know that I wanna flow. Doing it better when I'm doing clever off the tip of this when I be coming up with lines that's ridiculous. See, that's like the fastest gear that I could go through. Wish that I could go faster with the vocals. Yeah, and they know they represent it. Shouts to the people on here. Y'all know we about to kill it and make y'all have an incredible year. Several ears are turned to me, and another rapper burning me. Shouts out to the bro, Chris from Austria. I'm here bossing up. I put it down for all of y'all. All of my lyrics they do evolve. I'ma take a little time for the hydration while I represent throughout the live nation. No doubt. Thanks for the reminder. No doubt. Thanks for the reminder. All up in the session, I'm about to find ya. Me a mountain climber, I don't need ropes, yeah. Cause I got that hope. To the person that said they became disabled, keep your head up. Been in a chair for 43 years, yeah. Oh, you said what? If you think you were useless, think again. This is mind over matter. Yo, thanks so much for that inspiration, and thanks for dropping that data. No doubt. Yeah, see, this is a community. Lifting each other higher. Ayo, we soon to see how high we might go. Y'all know I really brought the flows. Shouts out to future speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I said thanks, man. This here must be a prank. Y'all know I'm about the holidays freeze. Y'all figure than a psychic color ID. Shout out to Proof, yeah. Rappers disappear like poof. This is real, not a spoof. Most abstract pocket you can get in. Shouts out to Cliff Beats and Black Pegasus for analyzing my rhythm. What do you do in your free time? I ain't got no free time. I'm looking for a mic because it's a free time. Freestyle time if y'all didn't catch it. Yeah, whack rap tapes about to get ejected.
I think I'm gonna put something else because it's too distracting. I have to put something, no letters. Let's put the same stuff that I always put. So the challenge here is, where should I put this stuff? That's what I'm thinking about. I think it makes more sense to put it inside of the drag function, because I'm ready for the drag function. I'm already separating the nodes, the node object with the node groups, which is the three.js mesh or three.js group that the raycaster is going to use. So since I'm already getting the array with the objects, it's gonna be better from that standpoint to put the GUI there, because then I can pass the objects to the GUI there. But then, like, another approach, which I think is gonna be the better one, is to put it on the store as I create the nodes. So I put the values as the values of the meshes as values on the store, and then I just pass those values for the GUI. So the more that I think about it, the more I think it's just better to just try to redo everything. But then, yeah, I'm gonna have to study three.js first, or D3 first. That's what I'm thinking. Because here, it doesn't make sense to put here, I think. unless I do this just to change the values of the camera and the scene. But then it wouldn't be very efficient, I think. So I think I just have to change everything first. And then I think about this. So I think the way that you do it is clear. You just pass the three.js objects here, and then you pass the key values from them, and then you set, if you want the slider, you put the min, max and stuff. The name's gonna be the name that shows up here, I think. The light intensity. It seems very useful though. The other thing that I'm thinking about is, which is going to be very challenging, is if I want to separate all the nodes. Like how I can do that. Because obviously it wouldn't be good to just put a input for every node. I think the search one is... So I have to create some logic that is going to select nodes. So I allow to select nodes. And then from that I can change the... I think that the stream stopped because of the music. So let me see if the stream's still working. I think this music is copyrighted, this part of the playlist. So it looks like it is still working. So I think before I do this, I have to clean everything up and figure out like the most efficient way to do things. So change everything. Then once I have the values on the store, then I can think about this. So let's do that. And the thing is, there are values here for the meshes. But I don't remember them being used on the other project. So this is the issue. I think I need to return the mesh here. And then I create a list here. And push to the list, the value. And then at the end, I set the meshes for the nodes and the edges here. The problem is that I have to pass them. Or I could just get from the store, I think, here. But then it's gonna be a problem because I think I can't use the hook here because this function is being called instead of another hook. Yeah, so this is an issue. So let me think. So at what points? I think that they put they update the edges and the nodes here. I think the edges come first because I mean, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the. But I'm gonna leave it like this. Because on the drawing you have to put the edges. You have to add the edges first to the scene so that the node is on top of them. I think I could just get the edges here. That's probably the best. So that's how they are doing, I think. Instead of setting the thing, you just get the value from the store here. And then you modify inside of the function. But then why have the sets meshes there? I think this is the reason why they are doing the nodes and edges, is because if you don't do new ones, it doesn't update the store because it doesn't re-render, I think. And this is the part that I'm gonna have to change everything. But it's gonna be difficult because it has all these other functions. And here is where the graphology is useful, I think, is one of these functions. That's graphology, I think, has some algorithms that allow you to determine some of the layouts. Or you put ranks on the nodes or something like that. But I think in the way that I'm doing it, I don't need this other stuff here. But maybe I do because it's setting the edges and the nodes. Yeah, so maybe instead of updating the nodes and the edges, I update the meshes instead. And I just put everything on the meshes. But then that would be the same as calling nodes and edges, I think. Actually not, because... Yeah, unless I outputs on the store, as the nodes being the group objects. So I think that the only line that matters for the stuff that I'm doing is this one, and obviously this one, because this one gets the node. It doesn't get the position. It gets the node based on the layout. And then this is the line that changes the position. And the other one, I think, is just gonna cause the render, because it creates a new node and then it creates a new thing. So when it sets there, it's gonna trigger a re-render, I think. And that's gonna make the layout work. But I could do that with the meshes instead. So the first thing that runs is probably the graph, the build graph, because it's the only use layout effect. So use layout effect runs before the use effect. This is another thing, because initially I thought that when you did the drag event, it would trigger the functions that create the layout, but I think that doesn't happen. Maybe in the way that they did it, it does, because they're integrating with refactor fiber, but the way that I'm doing, I think it doesn't. And this is something that I'm not 100% sure, but at least intuitively it feels that, like, if you do things like that with reactor fiber, then every time there's an event, it's gonna cause re-renders, so React's gonna be involved, but maybe not. I'm not 100% sure about that. But if that's the case, then it's just gonna be less efficient, I think. Because the way that I'm doing, I'm just changing the positions of the three.js application itself, the three.js visualization, and the state of the visualization is separate from the state of React. So if I do the way that I'm doing, then it doesn't cause it doesn't re-trigger the scene, which doesn't change the layout. But then the downside of that is that I have to manually update the edges, which was the stuff that I did there. But the way that they are doing now, I think that the edges are automatically updated as soon as you change the node position, because it's gonna call the function again for the layout. And I think that's the reason why they did it like this. So maybe I should just test this stuff. I'm kind of concerned of maybe actually I think I should merge the branch, because I think, yeah, I did a new branch for this. So maybe if I merge the branch, then, because I'm kind of concerned about removing this stuff and then fucking it up, the stuff that is already working. Never know how to put a message that is difficult, because you don't, like, there's not a lot of space to put something that explains here, and usually there I never know like what you put there. The thing is, I want to modify... I want to change these main things without changing the stuff from the layout for now. So I think that the way that the build graph works is just gonna change the graph based on the store. Because it doesn't seem like it sets a new graph or anything like that. So the build graph just adds the nodes to the graph. So I think what I can do is just pass the... I get the edges and meshes from the... But the thing is, I'm not really sure if that's the best way to do it. Because otherwise I have set nodes and I just... my concern is is that this stuff is related to the way React is gonna render things. So it could be that the case that it's just the same thing and it's not a big deal, but it could also be the case when you use the set node meshes is gonna be different than just getting the node meshes from the store and then adding the values. So one way is just I do this and then I pass this stuff here as an argument, and then inside of the function I add the meshes to this. But then it might be a problem because of the state of React, so it might be better to just... But if I pass the set function, I also think it doesn't... maybe it does work because I use hook there. I think the problem with the set meshes is that I would create a new node, and I think it would cause a rerender maybe. Yeah, because here it doesn't depend on the nodes and edges. So if I trigger here, I think it may cause an infinite loop. But I guess I should just try and see what happens. So I'm gonna try with the set first and create a new... I created a new array for both, and then I just set in the end. Let's separate this so I remember. Also not really sure if it makes a difference which one I return. Maybe it's better to return the one that's... Because here is the stuff that I was saying that I was testing. where I'm putting the... Oh, not even sure if this one. Somewhere here I put the... Oh, I think it's actually inside of the sphere that I did this. No, maybe not. No, I did it on the group. I put the node ID on the node group. I think here. So if you put ID, it doesn't work because the mesh already has an ID property or attribute. But here... And here I just put an attribute. Maybe I don't need to return anything, I just add node group. Yeah, I think it's probably better to just add the... I'll be right back. this is also something annoying about the edges, is that it requires 2 different three.js objects to do it. And I was thinking about this as well, whether or not I should go, because there's another approach with another library that it doesn't require to have 2 different objects, but the downside of that one is that you can't have curved lines. So I think that this is probably better, this approach, because of that, but it gets more complicated because the way that you update the edges, it requires the position of both nodes, and this is another issue with the graphology thing, is that when you loop over the nodes, it just gets the ID, it doesn't get the object itself. And this is annoying because you need the position of the nodes for the edges, so it would be much better if I had the object itself and then I could just loop and get the positions and then build the edges from that. So I think it's much better if I have everything on three.js, all the data for the visualization, and it just puts the attributes in the Node.js object from the node. So the build graph just transfers the data from the outside, from other parts, to the three.js objects, and then I do all the calculations based on the three.js objects. I think that's probably better. I'm thinking about whether or not it's worth it to put statements to prevent a situation where the mesh doesn't exist. Might be better, might be good to do this, because then it becomes easier to find mistakes. I guess I'm just gonna do that. And the problem is, and one annoying thing about JavaScript is how do you test. Because I can put different than undefined, and different than no, or different than whatever, or equal to empty this or that. Maybe I'll think about this later. Just gonna leave it like this. I think the only one that matters is the mesh for here. Because I have to rebuild the curve object every time the line changes, which is another annoying thing. Maybe it is better to think about another way to do the lines. Because the issue is, if I do like the physics, like kind of the same way that VJS does, I'm gonna have to change the lines and the nodes all the time based on the simulation, and then it's gonna have to recreate the curve all the time, which is very bad, I think. So ideally I would have an option between different types of lines and then put that on the customization, but that's very complicated as well. Like the most efficient line you can have is the one that comes from the three.js library already, on the standard library. Because it's just, but the downside is that it only goes up to 1 pixel. And drawing a line is very hard because of the way that the engine works. Because it can only draw triangles, I think. So these lines are combinations of geometries. If you want to make a thicker line, it becomes harder. Nice, it works. Yeah, so now I can pass this to the... The only question is whether or not this is the better approach or the other one is better. But I think that this one is probably better. Because I think that it's more likely that this one sets a remainder, and it's probably better to trigger a remainder at the end there, but... so what I can do is, instead of passing the nodes, I pass these meshes. Maybe I should do everything based on the meshes itself, like right now. And then I don't use the nodes and edges anymore. It's really hard to decide these things. One thing that I'm thinking about is the relationship between the curve and the mesh. Like if there's a better way to do it so that... Because it is really bad to recreate the curve every time. To actually recreate the tube geometry every time. Maybe the first thing that I should do is just try to change the edge without recreating the geometry. The problem I think is it has to be done this way because the only way is to change the curve. But let me think about this. Because that's the way that they are doing there on the project that I got this from. But maybe it's possible to just change the positions of the curve and that changes the line, but yeah, what is the link between the curve and the line? I'm thinking that the best way probably to do it is to just put all the attributes on the node. On the group. Let me think about this. Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe it is actually. Because then it's gonna be easier to put on the GUI as well. Because the classes are gonna have the values already. So I think that's probably the best way. I'm just thinking whether or not, like, later on, because of the way, like, if there's gonna be some customization that people will want to do on the label. Like if I put all the attributes on the group, if that's gonna fuck up the customization on the label. Because the group contains the label mesh and the sphere mesh. But I think probably it doesn't. I think it doesn't. So probably the best thing to do is to put all the attributes of the node inside of the... The problem is, what about optional attributes? Yeah, I think this is the issue. Because then I have to put an if condition for each one. It doesn't seem very good. But having another object that keeps track of the nodes and then another one that keeps track of the meshes is kind of annoying. Like, it is worse because for customizing it's gonna be worse, I think, and it's gonna trigger more re-renders, I think, because you have to change, maybe not trigger more re-renders, but it's gonna be less efficient, I think, because you have to change both things all the time. Every time the meshes change, I think I would have to change the node object as well. So the biggest downside of putting everything on the meshes itself is that is the custom attributes, the optional attributes of the node. Because then I need to make an if condition for each time, for all the attributes that I'm gonna possibly put inside of the node object, to decide whether or not I'm gonna put it on the... But I guess I could just... if the question is if the attribute doesn't exist, if it's gonna be undefined or if it's gonna break the thing. Maybe just skip these three main ones that are always necessary on the meshes. And then just leave separate like that. Just leave both of them. I think the core of the issue here that I'm having is deciding what parts should be better to leave for the visualization for three.js, because I think if I change the values on the meshes themselves, it doesn't trigger re-renders on React, so it's probably better, it's more efficient, but it is disconnected from the flow of the data that is going to come from outside, which is the way that the nodes are going to be created in the first place, because I'm obviously not going to be passing like this. I'm going to be receiving data from somewhere, and then you would be like, how do I integrate both of them? Like the custom component is going to be the thing that integrates, but maybe I think the customization is not going to have the ability to change the nodes from this point. That's the thing. Because it wouldn't make sense, because it's already, like, it's isolated from the canvas. Yeah, so I think if I have a custom component that allows for adding more nodes that based on data outside of the visualization, then it's gonna have to be a separate custom, not a separate, but the logic from the input is gonna have to be different. Because so it's probably better to separate them, I think, because that way you have the ability to... I think if I only do stuff, I need to have the two of them separate, actually. So I think it's probably better to do it this way. I just keep the most essential things on the meshes, the stuff related to the visualization, And then everything else I leave on these objects here because they're going to be related to the flow of data outside of the visualization. I'm not sure if that's... I need to find, obviously, the middle ground, I think. Because the edges are going to be complicated. So I think I need to have both, but I need to figure out the best way to have both. So what kind of... I think if I keep the essential attributes on the meshes, it's probably the best approach. And then I'll think about this later. So it's going to be the label. Yeah, for the node, it's just going to be ID, label, and color. And all of them need to have these attributes, I think. If the node doesn't have a label, then it just becomes the ID, I think. And then for the edge, it's gonna be ID, source, targets, label, color. The issue here is the way that it's structured here. I think that this is one of the main things. Because it's kind of annoying for the source to be the ID of the node and not the node itself. Because I think it makes some of the algorithms slower, but then the issue is that I don't know how the other libraries are done. So I don't want to build this stuff. So I have to think about a way that I can refactor without changing, without like being too deep into this approach here, so that later on maybe I can change. So instead of the source being the ID of the node, it becomes the node itself, because that would make a lot easier. Yeah, if I can create this link between the edges and the nodes through the meshes, because ideally when I update the node, it should update the meshes as well, because they're connected. So if I change the position of one of the nodes, it should change the edge, the mesh of the edge. I think that's the main thing that I'm trying to figure out. But the problem is that they are, the way that it works here, it's based on the ID, and then the mesh is gonna be done with the curve, and the curve has the position of the node. So I'm not sure if there's a way to change the, unless I build an algorithm for that, but which I kind of did already for updating there, but like, how do I create the link between the two? That's the question. Because the way that I'm doing here, I'm just putting them on these selected edges here when I click. And I'm not putting the edge, I'm just putting the essential information that it needs there. And then based on that, I map over the selected edges, which are the edges connected to this node. So I get the edges that are connected based on which node was clicked by mapping over the edges here. And then I update based on the position of one of the nodes, because the other one is going to be the same, obviously. But this is another problem, is because if I have physics, it's going to change, because then both nodes are going to change. I'm just realizing that. Yeah, so I would have to get the... But I'm already getting both nodes, I think. That's why I'm creating this node map here. So I see if the selected was the source or the target, and then based on that I put these values on this object here that have the position of both. I think the reason why I had to do like this is because the edge doesn't have the node, it has the ID. So I have to create the map, and then from the map I get the node, which is very annoying. So it would be better if the edge itself already had the group mesh. So the source of the edge was the mesh of the group. I think that would be a lot better. But then it gets into the thing that I was talking about before, where this is the main source, I think, of the problem. That is hard to think about what is the best way. Because it's this function here. It's like, because I still think I should have the node objects for the reasons I just said, but I think on this function I should, maybe on the meshes I create the link and then I update everything based on the meshes. Maybe that's better. So when I do the line graphics here, I am passing the nodes, so I should create a link between the node group and the edge here, I think. That way, instead of getting from the object, from the edges object on the drag, I would get from the meshes, and the meshes would already have the information for both nodes. So when it's selected here through the raycaster, I'm still gonna have to loop over, I think. It's kind of hard to think about it. What would change if I did it this way? So I'm trying to think if I can make the edge itself based on the group of the node, which is kind of already what I'm doing, but just simplify these functions here. Because here is going to be the actual node of the source and the target, and then the edge. And then I get the positions based on this. And this is something that I realize now, that the position is not based on the node in the beginning. Because it's getting directly from the nodes. And not from the mesh, from the node group mesh. Not sure if it's necessary to put a comment here, but it's kind of confusing with all the names. Maybe we should just change the name, so it's less confusing. So it should be passing the node.group instead of getting the problem is if I change this function, I think it's gonna change on the other places. I don't remember if I think I just used the get curve, so maybe. So it should be node group, not position. Because that's gonna be the position of this group here, which contains the sphere and the label. Also think I don't need this function. Like it's not that big of a deal to just put this line here. The offset is the size, is the radius of the node. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna put this here so it's easier to think about. I'm trying to see if I can connect the group with the edge. Like it is kind of connected already, but yes, so I can update, like, so it becomes more efficient to update the edges with the nodes on the drag events. What is the easiest way to find all the edges that are connected to a node and all the nodes that are connected to that node? So I think maybe if I have a dictionary that caches the groups with the edge, like the adjacent list that I had in the other graph.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
I think I have to I have to think about the questions that I have and then try to simplify. So they're connected with the curve. I think that's the problem. So one question is whether or not do I need to create a new tube geometry every time. I think if I can just change the positions on the curve, then probably I don't need to. I think that would be better. Yeah, I think that this is the better approach. If I can just get the nodes Yeah, but I still need to loop over that just to figure out what nodes are. Maybe if I had the adjacent list, that's the VJS has the other graph structure, other graph class that I built in the past had this algorithm that creates the list of nodes with the neighbors. So it's a key with is a object where the key is the node and the value is the list of the node's neighbors. So if I had that, and if I could update the line based on the positions of the nodes, then it would obviously be better, I think. But I'm not sure if it changes anything because you still have to run that algorithm in the beginning. But maybe it does because you only run that once, and then for every update it's gonna be a lot more efficient. So the cost is lower, I think. So I just set up this other structure that has the... And I also think that I don't need... Oh, yeah, but then it goes back to the whole thing where the reason why I'm doing things like this is because I have to use graphology. Because otherwise I would be using the nested objects for the nodes. Yeah, but let's say that I don't do this algorithm and I just do... If I could just change the line based on the two different nodes, how would I do that? I think I still need to loop over the edges and get the nodes. The only difference I think it would be that I wouldn't have to create a new class each time. Which is obviously better. So I think the question is how are they associated? So I should just see here. Yeah, I think the main thing, I'm not gonna worry about the other stuff now, I think. I'm just gonna see if I can only update the line, the position, and not create a new geometry. Maybe if I put them on a group as well, and then I just change the value of the group. I guess this is the problem, is because there isn't anything on the tube geometry that is related to the line. Just use the line to create the... But is there another way to create the tube geometry? Maybe it's not that big of a deal if you just think about that later. Because solving the other stuff is more important. I think there isn't a way to It just feels really weird though to have to do like this. 'Cause it would be much better if I could just change the values of the line, the positions. Let's say like the tube geometry kept the two vectors that make the position of the path, but I guess that you need to specify like the structure, the geometry of the path, and that's why you need the other class. That's probably why it works this way. So I think I'm getting off track. I'm gonna probably just go back to thinking about the other stuff. And now I forgot what I was doing. I think the first thing that I'm gonna do is just replace the node groups here with the meshes. So pass the meshes as an argument. I still have to loop over them though to create the map. I'll be right back. I think the main thing I have to do is change the layout functions. Thinking about off track, thinking about this stuff. And I don't remember why I did the meshes here, but there was a reason probably. I think for now I'm just gonna put the attributes on the nodes, the three.js objects, and then I'll think about later. But I think that there are probably ways, maybe, to optimize it, but I'm not really sure. It still works. So I'm gonna put the attributes here, and then yeah, I'm gonna see if it breaks anything. If it doesn't break, I'm just gonna focus on trying to change the other functions. The color is not necessary obviously. Maybe here I put the source, which is gonna be the node itself, and not the... It's gonna be the node object, not the ID. Oh, actually I need to see the... Nice. Yeah, so I think about this later. There's probably a way to make things better. I think that the good thing about doing it like this is that it's probably gonna be easier to customize, because then I can pass the three.js objects and they're gonna contain the information. But I think this is the problem. I think that the logic for linking them through, it has to be on the customization component. So I can't just embed the stuff on the structure itself. Like, I think the thing I was thinking about is more like trying to make them depend on the same object and just create different pointers to the same object from both things. So that way, when I change one instance of the object, it's gonna change the other one. It's like I change the position of the object itself, and then the pointers change by default. I think that's the stuff that I was trying to think about, how to make this happen. But I'm not sure if that's possible. That way, when I change the position of the node here, you would automatically change the mesh. I think that's what I was trying to achieve. Because then I don't need to update the meshes. It would update directly by default because I'm changing the objects. So yeah, but I think it's probably not possible to do this. So now what I have to do, it's gonna be annoying, but I have to go over these functions here. I think the first thing that I'm gonna try to do is see if I delete this, what happens, because I'm not using the drag anymore. This is my concern. It's not... Okay, so yeah, it didn't change anything. One thing that I have to keep in mind is that the way that I'm doing is not good because I'm just updating one of the... No, but I think that's gonna be easy because I have the 2 different nodes. I can just set the position. I'll think about this stuff later. I think this one is necessary. The most annoying one is this one. I have to change this, I think. Because I don't like the way that... Oh, but maybe it's maybe that's the best way, actually. But I don't like that much the way that this is done. It feels like there's probably a better way to do it. I think I have to study the D3 functions. That's what I have to do now. Maybe this part of the tick here is the one that is annoying. I'm not sure if I... Or this transform graph here. Because I think that the transform graph is the one that I have to think about. I think this one is related to the layout. And that's the part that is confusing, I think. It's obviously not gonna print here, so let me do this first. I think I have to simplify that first. I have to simplify this function here first, then I'll study the D3. Because, yeah, that's the main thing. Because based on the way that I'm doing now, I think that's... Yeah, it's... As far as I understand, the D3, it receives objects, and then based on that, it's gonna calculate the positions. So I don't need this function. I could just get the layout, and then based on the layout, I just set the positions. But maybe this is way... It feels like there is a better way, but I'm not really sure. It's confusing because this is the node, and this is the node as well, so it must be 2 different nodes. Yeah, those are the nodes that were passed here. So it is 2 different nodes. I guess that's the thing that doesn't make a lot of sense. Because why create these 2 different ones and not change the node directly here? That's my question. So when he calls this, I think he calls it on here. I'll close the rest of this stuff that is not related to this. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, because the reason why it's difficult is because I have to think about the physics engine. So, like, I'm thinking about, in my mind right now, is that instead of having the layout be the main thing, I should have the physics engine be the main thing, which is gonna be like the VGS simulations based on the positions of the nodes. And then the layout should be set by a button on the customization component. So when you click, should run these functions depending on what kind of layout it is. So I can put that on the customization component, and then based on that, it would set the positions of all the nodes. But I think it's not necessary to do this stuff here. That's the thing. And instead of making the map, I can just change the nodes directly. So I can pass the nodes to this function. But the problem is, so I guess the question is, what happens if I pass the three.js objects here? So maybe what I should try to do is just pass the meshes. Let's see what happens. Which are the groups. So instead of passing the nodes, I pass the meshes to the thing, and I see, and then I console log them later, just see what happens. I think it's not necessary to return there and to create this new thing here. But they might be doing like this because of the way that it's set there. But this is gonna return to the layout current. It might be because of this step here. That's the thing. So this returns this, and this is gonna return the ticker. But maybe if I just return the ticker, it works. Or the staff function. I think I don't need this one. But so this is the question: is what is the relationship between the staff function and the positions of the nodes? Because obviously it would be necessary if the staff changes the positions of these nodes here. And what is the best way to try to update this without having to dive into these functions here? I want to see if I can simplify that first before trying to understand the other functions. Yeah, I guess instead of having that, I would just have the X and Y and Z from the node itself. Oh, so it has this function. So I guess it's gonna call this function each step, I think. That's what happens. So it calls the transform graph each step. And then it gets the position at each step. But I'm not sure if that makes sense. It's probably because I don't understand this very well. And this is the library that I was gonna study. This is the I don't see the connection between this and this one. I'm gonna leave it like that. It's pretty much the same thing here, the nodes and the edges. So I think this just, it doesn't have too much to do with the nodes. It just creates the steps of the simulation, which creates the positions. And then the way that they did it here was to put the positions on these maps. So there isn't anything that's, which I don't think is very good. So I think it's much better to just put the positions on the, but I'm not sure how it works, because I think that's is calling this function each time to get the positions at each step through this function here. I guess it's because the meshes don't exist in the first render. Yeah, so maybe it goes back to the thing that I was talking about, like, because they don't create a new graph in the beginning, they just put the nodes and edges on the graph. So if I do it like this, they are gonna be undefined the first time. And if I pass the lists or arrays, then, and I push the objects through the arrays, then they're gonna exist the first time. So maybe it's better to just pass the list here and not the set. But I want to see if I can simplify this first, then I think about that. Because it's annoying me that I think it doesn't need to be this way. So I think here I could use the same node here. Maybe I just pass the graph nodes there, but I can't pass all the nodes. It's kind of annoying. Trying to think how I can pass the graphology nodes show this function here. So I don't have to create these new ones. That's because it has to be, if I do it like this, I have to specify the key. And maybe if this works. One thing I can do is just remove that part of the function to see if there's still going to be a layout that is not connected to the nodes at all. But I think what's happening is it creates the layout, which just creates the step function, and then it creates the other tick function that's going to call the transform graph at the same time that it calls the ticker, and then it's going to update the nodes based on the position of the layouts. But the thing is that it doesn't have anything. I think the D3 only creates it sets up the final position already, and then the only thing that the tick does is to. But then how would it know that's the beginning position? It seems like it still works. It's weird that it prints here and it prints the other place as well. Yeah, so I think that the nodes and edges here don't matter. It's just it's just a placeholder to get the positions later. Yeah, I think that's the thing. So the nodes contain the initial position, and these other nodes contain the final position. Now, what the ticker does is moves the nodes based on the tick count you pass there. I think that's what's happening. So, and that's the reason why you create two different nodes, is because every time this function gets called every step, and then at every step the disposition of the other node is going to be different, which is going to set the position of the actual node to this one, and then slowly going to move towards the final position. But this way is very confusing. I think that. So the question is, how can I think I can put the. But I have to study this functions here first, I think. I'm just gonna open the other repository or the other file that I have for this. I think I'm gonna take a break soon. Like, do some meditation and then I'll continue studying this. So the issue here is that I need to understand. It seems like it doesn't have anything to do with the nodes though. So that's the kind of thing that's like, it's just weird. I'm probably missing something. Here, the nodes are here. So these nodes is not the same, maybe. What if I pass here? The problem is that I don't know if it's getting the... I think this is not gonna get all the nodes from the graphology thing. I guess I can just pass the nodes themselves to this function. I think the issue with passing the nodes is gonna be the thing that is undefined in the beginning, so I would have to put a condition there. So passing here. Yeah, because it's setting the nodes here, so it doesn't make sense. It's so confusing. Each step is gonna set the nodes, I think, again, but I'm not really sure because of the way that this is structured. Because it might be the case that this just puts these functions on the request animation frame. But yeah, I think the first time that it calls is here, and then here. But at what point does it call? I think it's already calling the function here. And this is just gonna run this. So the problem here is that it's setting the nodes and edges here. I think one thing that I'm gonna do to see if I can make this clear is just pass this stuff there. I don't understand what the point of this table is, though. It's very confusing. So this is gonna be the transform, and then it returns void, but receives this table. Maybe if I just get rid of this stable and just see. I think I'm just gonna get rid of this because it's too confusing. And then which one? That's another thing that is confusing, is that it seems like it is running both of the situations, which doesn't make sense. But obviously it might be. It probably is because of it is at different times in the rendering cycle. So the layout would be layout current. The first time it makes it equal. Oh. Didn't realize I was making it equal here. Yeah, so I guess this is just undefined in the beginning. So it runs the first step and then calls the callback, passing the stable in the callback. But that doesn't make sense to me. So it's passing the return of the layout inside of this transform graph. Oh, it's because no, that's... Yeah, the step function returns the... I'm confusing the two different functions. It's this function that is calling, and it's gonna return this value. But it still doesn't make sense why it passes the stable as an argument here. Because I'm confusing what the callback is gonna be as well. Layout, but the callback is this function. So yeah, I'm confusing because I'm thinking that the callback is gonna be the transform, but it's gonna be this one. So it doesn't, like, this stable doesn't mean anything here. So I guess it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just because of the type that they did this. No. Damn, this is confusing as fuck. I guess I'm confusing how many times this function runs as well, because in my mind I'm thinking about the function being inside of the request animation frame. But I think it's just gonna run as many times that this is called. So it's called the first time on the build. Here, the first time. Then it builds the layouts. I guess this is another thing that is confusing, so it's probably better to separate them. Yeah, but I guess the issue is gonna be that this one requires the layouts. But I'm pretty sure there is a easier and simpler way to do this, because this one is very confusing. It's just passing the layout in the first time. Stable is gonna be undefined, so it's gonna do this and then it's gonna call the function again. So it just calls layout step and then calls the callback, which is this. So it calls layout step first and then it calls transform graph. That's what it does. So what if I just replace by oh, it's setting the edges inside of here. That's another thing. I think I'm gonna comment this out and then I'm going to see if it works just by calling this step and then the function. Like, what is the difference? Sure, there is an explanation, but yeah, it seems like it works. So, I don't understand why they did it like this. But the thing, like, this is the issue, is that it might be that I'm missing something. Or it might be that it was like this just because they were doing refactor fiber. But it feels very, very weird. I felt like this the first time that I read this. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah. So I think that the step only runs once, and then you transform the graph based on the positions. But maybe not. It's obviously gonna run more when it re-renders, but I was thinking more that it's gonna run it's gonna run inside of the request animation frame, but I think that's not what's happening. Yeah, 0, 1. So, let me think. So I think the only thing that the D3 library does is just puts the positions at the end. And this step is gonna make them... But I think that the reason might be because they were using the React Spring library, so it might be because of that. I think. The reason for having this stuff here. Because otherwise, what is weird is that it doesn't make sense that it has this tick count here. It must be... I think this is what made me think that this was gonna run multiple different times in each, like, was gonna run on each frame, maybe. Yeah, run the ticker 100 times. overdo the animation. This is what's weird. So I think I have to see on the other project how they are doing. Because it seems like the layout is the same way that it was before. So I guess like each time that you run, you call this, is gonna call the tick, and then it's gonna change the position. So if I call it more than once, I guess I can do that to see what happens. Maybe it's different. Yeah, I think it does change the positions. And they were probably doing like that for the animation because they're using React Spring. So I think I have to see the other project to see how they did it, because I want to understand how this is related to the request animation frame, because I think now I get it, that like it's gonna construct the simulation, which is gonna set the positions, I think, and then in the beginning of the simulation the positions are gonna be, yeah, but the thing is I'm not past, like there's no connection with the other nodes, so I think it just creates the final position, and the beginning of this simulation is this function here. So I set the initial position of the nodes based when I create the graph, and then this step just changes the value of the positions based on whatever the layout is, which is the final. But oh, there needs to be a connection between them. Yeah, I think the connection happens here, yeah. So it just sets the values of the positions based on the tick. So the question is, what is the starting position? Because the nodes are gonna be... Oh, they're not gonna be empty actually. They are the nodes from the graph. So they do have the position. So I think guess the starting position and the end, and then the ticker just determines how it's gonna change the positions. Yeah, I think I'm already tired. It's 3 hours, so I'm gonna stop here. But I'm gonna study the library. I wanted to keep going because I put on the title that I'm gonna study the D3 library, but I'm already really tired, so I'm gonna take a break and then maybe I'll come back later today to study this. And I think I might have to look at the other projects because it's very confusing the way that it is here, and I'm sure that I can simplify this, because I think that I don't need to create other nodes. I don't need to create these nodes and edges here. I can figure out a way to just pass the meshes here. Yeah, I have to see. Maybe the best thing to do is to study this now. Because I have to see, so maybe I should write down here. What do I need to know? I think that the reason is probably just because of the properties, but if that's the case, I can just add them to the... I think it's the radius, probably, that the mesh doesn't have. The other thing that it might fuck up is the setting here. But I think that these are different nodes and edges. Yeah, but this is the thing, because if I use the node meshes, then... Oh, it's actually the same node now that I think about it. Oh, it's different nodes because the transform graph is using the nodes from the graphology graph. So here it sets the nodes and edges with the D3 positions, and then here is the nodes from the graphology which don't have the positions. And then I'm updating based on the graphology nodes. That's the thing that is confusing, because on the drag I'm using the meshes, and the meshes are coming from the nodes, not the graphology. So what I want to achieve is to have the same, just do everything on the same nodes, so I don't need to... Yeah, but the thing, I think the reason why they do like this as well is because of the other functions. This page rank and this other stuff. That's the problem. But I'm sure that I can simplify this. It doesn't feel right. But it's fucking confusing. I think, yeah, the difference is that, and this is the part that is very confusing, is because these nodes are from the new nodes, but these are going to be also the nodes because they are set later here in the store. But they are different from the graphology nodes, which are the main nodes being used to create the layouts. So the difference is only on the properties. So I think what I have to do is figure out how to change how to make the D3 work with the mesh itself, and then I create different attributes on the same thing. But the problem is I still need the graphology for the other stuff. That's the annoying thing. Because I'm essentially using three different things, like the meshes, the nodes from the store, and the graphology nodes. That's why, and it feels like very inefficient. That's the problem. Because it obviously would be much better if I had... I think I need at least two because of the stuff that I was talking about before, where I have to separate the logic of the data that is gonna come in the visualization and the logic that is gonna handle the visualization. But I think that's having the graphology. So maybe I should, yeah, but I can't really unify. Maybe if I just remove the nodes and edges and I just keep the graphology one. Maybe that's the better approach. I think that's the better approach. And then everything else I keep on the meshes. And then instead of passing... yeah, but then this is the problem because I don't know if I can grab all the nodes from the graphology. It would be better if I could just pass the graphology nodes inside of here. And then just create a new attribute on the nodes. And then I use the same node and just update with the different attributes of the same node. Or I can keep it like this and then update the... I think if I put everything on the meshes is better, and then I figure out how to replace graphology. It's probably the best way. Or just use graphology to loop and to run the other functions. I can also have the same attributes on both of them, but it feels inefficient as well, so... And here is setting again the nodes, which is also weird. But I guess that is gonna set the nodes again with the new ones here. But I don't need to do this. I think they were doing like this because reactor fiber, but I think I don't need to do it like this. Yeah, I'm gonna take a break. I'm already too tired. So I'm gonna think about this off stream. Maybe I'll come back today and study the tree library. It's very confusing. So I think I have to fix this first before I think about the other stuff, because it's kind of annoying me as well. I think once I'm able to clean this stuff up, but the problem is I might have to study the other libraries before I figure out a way to clean this up. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe I'll come back today, maybe I'll come back another time. But I want to continue to work on this next